What's going on, guys? Dana White Contender Series Week 10 preview, and just about ready to pack it in and say screw the preview because everybody's like a massive favorite at this point. But it's the last week of the season, and I know eventually I'm going to sit around with nothing to do and say, damn, I wish I was previewing some Contender Series fights on a Tuesday night. So you know what? Let's try to make the last week profitable. Yeah, we do got some big favorites. Probably going to be an apple pie shitter at some point. So let's try to get him at the bottom, go with our most confident plays, turn this last week into a profitable one, and then anxiously await for the return of the next season. Starting off, we got Canada's own Achilles Estremadura versus China's Maheshate. Is it pronounced like Maheshate? I hope not, because everyone's seen the movie Maheshate, Dana White, and he's a badass. I'm hoping this Chinese prospect not quite the same, and the odds makers kind of agree with that Maheshate is not as good as Maheshate, and he's coming in about a plus 500 underdog comeback on Achilles Estremadura. Again, he's been like 700, keeps going up. I'm seeing some places as high as at minus 820 now. At some point, you're going to have to realize it's too big of a favorite, but they're on the right path, I believe. We'll start off with the underdog. There's just not really much to know here. First and foremost, he's only 21 years old. So when you look at guys in the Contender Series, even if they were top American prospects, but they're only 21 years old, they're not above shit in the apple pie. They're not above going out there and having a bad performance. Why? Because they're 21 years old. What the hell was everybody else doing at 21? Certainly not fighting in the octagon at the highest level like these guys. So they're prone to make mistakes. Then you factor in this is another Chinese fighter out of UFC PI Shanghai. They went 0-3, I believe, at UFC 261. They went 0-3 last week on the Contender Series, and there's a good chance that they could go 0-3 this time around. I have a feeling that some Chinese prospect is going to win on this card, but I don't think it's going to be Maheshate. I just don't think he's got it. Now, saying that, what do we really know about him? Not much. He fights on M1 Challenge 103. You can watch that one. Loses his pro debut. It's only in 2019. So, again, he's 21 years old. He's been fighting for a couple of years. Not a whole lot of experience, but you can't find a whole lot of footage from some of these other fights. He does show 3 knockouts of his 5 victories, and it looks like he's way comfortable in the stand-up department. But again, a lot of these Chinese prospects, if the fight does hit the ground, he's going to be in a lot of trouble. And as far as the stand-up game goes, it's not super refined. It's not super polished. He's not very experienced. And he's won a couple fights by decision, so maybe his gas tank's not a massive issue. But being pressured, being under the bright lights, having Dana White cage side, fighting an actual legitimate contender for Dana White Contender Series, like not a contender in the grand scheme of things, but all of that should tire him out. I just don't think he's going to have enough dimensions to his game. He could come out there and shock us because, again, there's not a whole lot of readily available footage, but for a 21-year-old Chinese prospect, just too much of a task. Achilles Estremadura, meanwhile, he's 29 years old. Pretty decent size for the weight class. He was a stud amateur. I mean, he fights for the BFL promotion over in Vancouver and starts off his career, I believe he was 4-0 as an amateur, and he runs into this other mega prospect by the name of Sexy Alexi Arjariu. Different story for a different day, but Arjariu was supposed to be super legitimate. He does lose that fight, turns pro a short time later, and it's been a continuation of his amateur career. It looks like he's got some decent pop in his hands, but he's also got good cardio. He shows in terms of his pro career, not that it means a whole lot. He went the distance with fucking Kerry Latimer's 14-26, but he shows 3 decision victories of his 7 professional wins. All 3 of those decision victories were 5-round title fights. So cardio doesn't seem like an issue for him. He's fought 5 rounds 3 times in his career now and has never really slowed pace. He seems to be kind of methodical in there, decent hands, decent wrestling, decent overall game, maybe a bit of a generalist, but someone that's going to be able to push the pace, have an advantage on the ground. And as far as the stand-up goes, he's not going to be totally out of place. For a guy that's also, again, he went to decision with a 14-26 opponent. Not that impressive. You know, a decision over Carson Frey, not that impressive. The win with Ryan Rahovich, they got it listed as a unanimous decision. I'm pretty sure it was a majority decision. Not that impressive, but it's just the young building blocks of a fighter. He's gone through a little bit of adversity. He's figured out his overall game. And then for someone who I wasn't, he just looks average. That last fight with Curtis DeMars, again, another journeyman level opponent, but a seasoned guy in the Canadian scene, and he just absolutely melted a minute and a half into the fight. I think Achilles has also fought at a few weight classes. His last fight against DeMars, he came in at 152 pounds. He's fought at 145. He's moved around a little bit, but all the same, I think that he should be the favored fighter. Just at 8-1, I don't love it. So do we use him as top ticket material? I'd rather not. But in comparison to some of the other guys on the card, he may end up being. And then what'll end up benefiting us there is that it's the main event. And it would be a very easy hedge out. If we can hit the other 4 and we're going to the main event, not that we want to or need to hedge out, but Maheshate's going to be such a big underdog that even if you put $100 on him, it's going to pay $500. and you would be able to hedge yourself both sides. So I don't have time to explain what hedge is right now, but you should know what this is. If you don't, just look it up, and it's just being the safe way. If you want to let it ride, let's let it ride. But we'll know come main event time. Moving on, we got another Canadian fighter, Johan Lainesse, taking on England's Justin Burlinson. The current odds are Burlinson minus 330 as a favorite. Comeback on Johan Lainesse plus 260. Burlinson's the pick of the week. I think he's your lock of the week. Safest guy on the card. I know I got to shit on the Canadian fighter here, but barring a puncher's chance, barring he happens to clip Burlinson's got the advantage everywhere. So let's start with him. I think he's a pretty decent prospect. He's only 24 years old. They got him listed on Tapology at 6'1", and I think that's probably somewhat accurate. But important to note his last fight for Cage Warriors, he's listed as being 6'3". Kid starts his amateur career shortly after his 15th birthday. And overall, as an amateur, has a recorded 17-1 record. As an amateur, again, he fought guys that later on went to be established pros on the English regional scene. So it wasn't like it was a soft level of amateur competition, but he fought as an amateur for like 4 years and went 17-1. Who does that? A young kid, 15 years old, experience, building. Most guys go pro after 2 amateur fights. Some guys don't even fight amateur at all. This is a huge benefit for this kid. So when he turns pro, it's like, oh, he's 0-0. It's like, no, he's had 18 fights at this point, not pro fights. But I'll tell you, fighting amateur on the English regional scene is, well, what's the difference? 3-minute rounds? Because you're not wearing shin guards. You're not wearing headgear. Like, it's pretty well a fight, and he's got 18 of them. So as far as his pro career goes, it's been the same. He's been signed to the BAM organization. Bellator gave him 2 fights. He's fought once for Cage Warriors, and he's looked pretty damn good all throughout. He's super hyper aggressive, likes to stay in his opponent's face, backs them up. He's got a quick jab, decent right hand. Everything he likes to do is quick, but he does stay in your face. As far as his ground game goes, pretty decent ground game. He's going to have a big time. When I say pretty decent ground game, his takedown defense, not so great, but his actual grappling, his jiu-jitsu, good submission game, decent off his back, stays out of trouble. I would like to see him try to make a bigger commitment to standing back up. You do notice in the fight with David Bear, he likely does lose the first round because Bear scores a good first round takedown, holds him down for 4.5 minutes. But as soon as Burlinson gets back up, he's all over Bear. He smashes him the last 30 seconds. Comes out in the second round and just goes right to business, puts him away in the second. David Bear, actually a decent enough opponent. So I really like what I see out of him. It looks like cardio is not going to be an issue. He pushes a good pace. He's going to go out there and scrap it out. He's now 6-0 as a pro, but again, you got to go back to his 17-1 amateur record. Tons of experience out of him. The takedown defense, kind of like that one little thing that I don't love about his overall game, that he could get exposed if he signs a contract and goes to the UFC. But Johan Lainesse, not likely. You could take him down for sure, but not going to take him down over a consistent period of time. Lainesse, meanwhile, a 1-1 as an amateur. And then as a pro, I watched all of his pro fights. I attended 2 of them live, but I mean, I was a big fan of the TKO organization. He's fighting a very low level, and he goes out there super sloppy, head up in the air, slow, plodding, and just chucks bombs. If he hits you, you are in a lot of trouble. So he goes 3-0 in the Quebec scene. COVID happens, so Quebec's not having any shows. Canada's having very few shows. So he signs up to go to CFFC in New Jersey. Not very many people do that. And the people that do that don't usually have a lot of success because CFFC is a top organization, and the guys out of the New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania area, killers. But Johan goes, and he had a lot of success. He had a highlight reel flying knee over this Larim Latufi. Troy Green, I thought that might be a tougher fight for him, but he looked pretty good there. Then he gets a CFFC title shot against Evan Cutts. Evan Cutts is supposed to be a cardio machine, but man, both guys gassed out. It was a sloppy fight. First round, Evan Cutts wins the first round and actually opens up a pretty dirty cut over Lainesse's eye. Lainesse is gassed. They come up for the second round. They're both gassed. And Lainesse just says, fuck it. Starts chucking them bombs. He backs up Butcher. He does have Butcher in a bad spot, but Butcher's on his feet kind of half crumpled over. Not crumpled over. Bad posture, bad body language, but he's fine. He's okay. Ref just stops it. I'd say it's an early stoppage. I'd say the reason why it's significant that it's an early stoppage is because Lainesse has a terrible gas tank. So if Butcher would have just simply survived, he had fought 5 rounds before, he was likely going to take over. And when you look at Lainesse, that's a problem, right? I mean, he has gone to decision a few times, very gas going the decision, but he's a quick finisher. He likes to put away opponents quick. If he doesn't, he tires out. Offensively, he will use his wrestling a little bit, but mostly just to take you down, hold position a little bit, take some time away at the clock. If this could be competitive standing and he could get a takedown and maybe hold 2 minutes of top position, maybe he steals around from Burlinson. I just think in the stand-up, it's going to be one guy with the power advantage, swinging wild, and I think Burlinson's going to be in his face, stick him with the jab, control the range if he wants to, but tire this guy out. When Lainesse tires, and he will tire, Burlinson's just going to take over on him. So, yeah, we're got to go with Burlinson as top ticket material. He's a minus 300 favorite. I actually like him a lot more than Achilles Estremadura, who's a minus 700 favorite, minus 800 favorite in some spots. So that's probably going to be the consistent of your top ticket. On top of that, what's Burlinson inside the distance and by knockout? Burlinson by TKO plus 200. And I don't know what book that is. Apparently, it's a better price somewhere else. But if you have a DraftKings account, shout out to DraftKings because they sponsor the Dogger Pass podcast. Plus 200. I'm going to hit that as soon as I finish the show. He's putting this thing away. I don't think this thing's going the distance. Fight doesn't go the distance. It's minus 250. Okay, so odd makers know this thing ain't going the distance. So who's going to finish it? Lainesse is undefeated, but he's going to get knocked out, in my opinion. And if he wins the fight, it's by knockout. Sure. Burlinson, meanwhile, he's going to catch him. He's going to intercept him and put him down, I believe. TKO would be his best path. Do they even think submission's on the table? Yeah, see, they got submission at 225 and TKO straight up at plus 200. Burlinson inside the distance, in case, just decide to pull a little bit of funny business, is minus 110, minus 125, depending where you get it at. So, yeah, if your book offers Burlinson specifically by TKO, I'd go with that. If you want to just take Burlinson inside the distance, cover yourself on both, I would go with that as well. As far as parlay material goes, Burlinson's going to have to be a piece of it. And if Johan Lainesse goes out there and lands that big, tomahawk of a right hand and puts him down, like, damn, I'm going to have the egg on my head. But this is a fight where the better fighter should prevail, and that's Burlinson. It'd be a little sticky maybe for 3 to 5 minutes, but we're going to pull away in the stretch. If your book also offers live betting opportunity and Burlinson doesn't look great in the first but survives the first, I'd also be interested there as well. Moving on, we have a Brazilian-China matchup with Erison Ferreira taking on Lung Q. The current line is Erison Ferreira, some gigantic favorite, I believe. The specific price is Ferreira minus 550, comeback on Lung Q in that 380, 350 kind of range. This one could be a big apple pie shitter. Erison Ferreira, 10-1. All 10 of his wins are by knockout. Generally before 2 rounds. A lot of them in the first round, sometimes in the second round. He just finishes so damn quick that I'm a little bit worried of where's his gas tank going to be at if he doesn't get that first round knockout. He does show 1 pro loss. It's a split decision loss, and it's from about 3 years ago. But see, the problem there is that he's knocked out all these guys, and then that one loss, it's not like he got caught, he got submitted. It's that one fight that happened to go the distance. He ends up losing it. So for what it's worth, he's going to have to go out there and get a quick knockout, and it's certainly possible. He's fought the better level of competition. He looks very heavy-handed. He's one of these brute-style guys, but the easiest way to win this fight is a takedown. Just shoot the takedown. You'd be money. I just don't really trust Ferreira to shoot the takedown. And for guys that have so much success knocking out their opponents in the first round or two, it's like, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they won't. They'll come out, they'll stand, they'll bang. He's fighting for a contract. Dana's cage side. He wants a knockout win, right? That's going to ensure him a contract into the UFC, which is what he came for. So they throw caution to the wind, but they also throw the game plan out the window. That could be a little bit of a problem. Lung Q, meanwhile, 24-year-old fighter. Again, he's going to be another one of these Shanghai Performance Institute guys, but he's originally from Enbo. It's like an orphanage in China that take kids in and they just turn them into fighters. So no doubt about it that he's going to have a lot of experience. And sure enough, he's only 24 years old and he's got over 20 pro fights as well. When you look at his record, he's a good striker. I mean, his biggest issue is that, well, he's an okay striker, but that's definitely the best part of his game. His issue is that they take him down. They take him down. He's got no resistance. Submitted in his first 3 fights. And then he shows this loss to Bogi Zhang. Again, takedown defense is a problem. Not only is takedown defense a problem, but once you do take him down, he's offering no resistance, doesn't create space, doesn't move his hips, doesn't try to angle off, doesn't try to get up, doesn't try to throw up submissions, almost just like accepts the position. So when you match him up against strikers, and he's fought a lot of strikers, yeah, he's okay. He's live, decent enough. But beyond that, he's got a submission problem. So I think of his 7 losses, he's been finished in 5 of them, 3 times by submission, twice by knockout. It's not the best look. What I don't mind about him is that as far as just his straight up striking game goes, he's not getting taken down. He's aggressive and he's got output. He'll come in your face and he's come in your face, man. I caught myself off guard on that one. He will get in your face and just basically kill the distance, stay aggressive. He seems decently strong in the clinch and it seems like his cardio is okay. And that last point is what makes him the live underdog. It's because Erison Ferreira doesn't have a great chin. I know he's never been knocked out. I know he's had his way in a lot of these fights, but he seems to me like he just hasn't fought anybody that's really posed a whole lot of resistance to him. Beyond that, his cardio might not be great as well. And so what I envision happening in this fight is that no doubt Ferreira jumps on right off the hop. It may very well put him away in that first round and a half, maybe 2 rounds. If he fails to put him away in that first round and a half, he's going to start to fatigue. And this Chinese fighter is just going to work his way back in, land something, and that's going to turn the tide of the fight. So I'm not going to straight up pick Lung Yu as the underdog. However, that's the reason why Erison Ferreira is not on my top ticket and why he could potentially be an apple pie shitter of sorts. So a little bit of buyers beware there. I think the other way you attack this thing is that it ain't going the distance, right? So on one hand, you've got the Brazilian fighter who's finished all 10 of his pro wins inside the distance, and then Lung Yu, who's been finished multiple times himself, but is a bit of a finisher, especially if Ferreira gets tired, and Ferreira is a little bit chinny like I suspect that he may be. This thing ain't going the distance, which the odds maker rightfully so has at minus 275. The over-under at 1.5, Over-under 1.5, I always take 1.5. But I do have this earmark for being a banger that not going to go probably a whole lot. So I would take the 1.5. But honestly, I don't like that prop as much as I thought I might. I thought they would just give you a good under 2.5 or a good fight doesn't go the distance. But 275, that's already been steamed up already. Moving on, we got Kawaihae versus Jonas Bilaharinho. The current odds on this one are Kawaihae is a minus 145, minus 150 favorite. Jonas Bilaharinho about plus 115, plus 125. On one hand, kind of cool seeing Jonas Bilaharinho making his, trying to win a contract with the UFC. For people that aren't familiar with him, he was brought in about 2016 by Jose Aldo in his camp to mimic Conor McGregor, right? He was known as Brazilian Conor McGregor. He also has a Taekwondo background. He has very movements similar to Conor, very bouncy. And then they thought with his length, he was like 5'11". He's bigger, longer than Conor, but was good with that range management, that he'd be the perfect guy for Jose Aldo to work with. So they really build this guy as like, oh man, Jose is basically like, I've already fought Conor McGregor multiple times in the gym. Like nothing Conor can show me I have not seen. Jonas has got me ready. And then he gets slapped in like 12 seconds, right? So that was always funny to me. But what ends up happening is this Bilaharinho guy is super talented and he's young and he puts together a decent record for himself, but he was only fighting about once a year maybe. And then Aldo and all them hype him. Aldo gets slapped in 12 seconds. He takes a fight, Bilaharinho does, against this Valdine Silva in Jungle Fight 86. He starts off pretty okay, like he always does, good distance management, but this Valdine Silva starts to just back him up, be aggressive, get in his face. And whereas most guys are afraid to fight him, similar to Conor, right? In the early days of fighting Conor McGregor, it's like, shit, I don't know what to do. So you're puzzled and you stand there on the outside, boom, he hits you. Then eventually it was just like, screw it, I'm just going to pressure him, put a little bit of foot on the gas and make this a dirtier fight. And so when Valdine Silva does exactly that, you've seen Bilaharinho kind of shy up. He took a big shot and it kind of changed the course in that first round. Then he gives up the easiest takedown going. The takedown defense is non-existent, similar to Conor McGregor, who's at least worked on it. But looks bad, man. Looks awful. And then in the second round, up again, he's tired. He's tired. His takedown defense is shaky. His striking's not as good as it was. His movement's completely fallen off. And this Valdine Silva, who would then go to lose 3 in a row against good competition, but it's just basically a run-of-the-mill guy who came in with a good game plan, knocks him out. Nice. Good knockout. Like he's out smooth. That just basically creates this like chain of events, I guess. In his own words, after the fight with Valdines, I went into a process of searching for self-awareness. I met a guy named Osho. I read a book of his called The Book of Ego. Then I realized kind of knowledge that I didn't know exists. In 2 months, I read about 7 of his books. I read a lot of people. I went deeper into that, into self-awareness. On this trail, I ran into God. But it's not bumping into God symbolically. It's bumping into living God. I saw God alive. He speaks to me to this day, and I have an intimate relationship with God. I try to walk where God sends me, and I went back to MMA because God told me to go back, saying MMA is the way of my life. It goes on, but let's not go into deep. All I'm saying is that he took 3 years off that fight, found God, came back, crazy flying knee. But I mean, that's who he is. He's flashy. He's pizzazz. He can land a flying knee. He can land a spinning hook kick. He can land that. It's whether you extend him into the second round, whether you can shoot some takedowns, whether you can make this a grinding affair. And that's where he falls apart. And that's where I expect him to fall apart. By the way, he found God. He came back. He beat Junior Duarte by flying knee. And then it's been 2 years since then. So he's effectively had one fight in the last 5 years. And it was a first round knockout due to a flying knee. what do you really know about him? Kind of the same stuff we knew before, is that his style don't work and people have figured it out and you need someone to stay in his face and be aggressive. Kanan Kawai, I believe, can do exactly that. Now, he's only 24 years old and he himself hasn't really fought a ton, but I don't mind his story. So, well, he's a BJJ black belt, okay? So I think that's probably going to be a first and foremost here, is that if he can get this fight to the ground, that'd be the easiest path to victory. As much as you can beat Bilaharinho by pushing him back, he's still going to be live. He's still a banger. He can still land some flying stuff. Why not take him down, grind him in that first round? Second round, he's not as explosive. He's not moving as well. Second round is when you stay in his face and put him away. But the takedown would be awesome. And again, for a 24-year-old kid, Kanan Kawai, I think it's been another learning process for him, but he fought on Contender Series in 2018 against Chase Hooper. Chase Hooper was 18 years old. Kanan Kawai was 20 years old. Kanan looked great in the first round, dropped Chase Hooper with the left hand, just completely in control from top to bottom. It's a rinse and repeat, beautiful first round. Second round, you can see he's tiring out, big time tiring out. Doesn't have a terrible second round, but he gets taken down. He spends a little bit of time off his back. He hits 2 sweeps, but he himself gets swept. Now, it's important to note he's only a BJJ brown belt during that fight, but he's 20 years old. He's already a brown belt. Like, this kid could be pretty good. Cardio is what let him down. Third round, he's tired. He loses. He doesn't get finished. And Paul Felder, as soon as the fight's over, is like, 100% this kid's going to go back to the drawing board, go back to the gym, and his coaches are going to be like, we got something we can work with. Cardio, cardio, cardio. But he fights one more time after that against Timothy Tevis. Bellator had picked him up. He won a decision. And then, he quietly took almost 3 years off. Came back, fought Jake Childers on LFA 105 about 6-7 months ago, and he wins by 20-second ninja choke. Ninja choke, pretty sweet. You don't see them very often. It's kind of like a modified guillotine, I guess, but 20 seconds. So cardio was definitely an issue in the Hooper fight. Did go the distance once, but then took a 3-year gap, and then one fight in 20 seconds. And that's the only way I see him losing this fight, is if his cardio is not up to snuff. Because Bilaharinho, you just got to pressure him a little bit. Work for the takedown. Once you get it to the ground, huge grappling advantage. As far as the striking game goes, listen, he looked good against Hooper early. Southpaw stance, good left hand straight down the middle. And then when you go on social media, he's not related to Brad Tavares, but it's like Tavares' his little brother. So he comes out to UFC Performance Institute in Las Vegas, been there for a month, and Brad Tavares brings him under his wing. He's high up on the kid. Kid's been continuously getting better. It's just he hasn't fought a whole lot, so we don't really get to see it. And I guess that's kind of where we're at. So he was supposed to fight Bruno Silva a few months ago, and Bruno Silva's a top-level guy. Again, I got to think that Team Canaan is high up on his skills. They know what they got. It's just he was 20 years old fighting in front of Dana White, and he suffered an adrenaline dump after one round. This time around, he's 24 years old. He's more mature. He's a better fighter. He's been awarded his black belt in the time since that fight. Striking, not terrible. He's minus 150. Like, this is the closest line fight on the card, and this is what will add value. What are these big favorites really going to do for us? We need Kanan to come through and get the job done. If he does, it would be a big help. Be a big help at the very least. And then finally, we got Zifa Shang versus Juan Puerta. Juan Puerta is a minus 180 favorite. The comeback on Zifa Shang about plus 155. You know what? I'm going to take the dog shot here. Team China. I know. Crazy. They've been having just the ungodly run of terrible luck. And this fight really could go either way. But that's the exact point. I think it's probably closer to a 50-50 fight than a 2-1 favorite status for Juan Puerta. And so I guess we'll talk about Juan Puerta to start off. He's a 2-1 favorite. He's 33 years old as a flyweight. What he does well at flyweight is that he's 5'8", so he's got an excellent frame. He's a long guy, and he's a good grappler. That's where he wants to take the fight. That's where he's going to have his best success. Early on in his career, it's a mixed bag of results. He fights some decent level guys, but he really turns the corner in 2017, and that currently puts him on an 11-fight winning streak. Hasn't lost since 2017. In that stretch, he beat Jorge Calvo Martin, Titan FC. He's a pretty solid prospect. Well, not prospect, but pretty solid all-around fighter. I'd consider that a good win. He beats Gustavo Ballart. Gustavo Ballart is borderline dwarf. You can't call them midgets anymore. I think it's offensive, so he won't, but he's borderline a dwarf. But he's 4'11". But he's a hell of a wrestler, and he was undefeated 6-0 at the time. And Puerta comes out there, good first round, good second round, probably winning the fight, in my opinion. Smokes him out with a third-round flying knee. This Kazbek Ashimov, not bad. Claudio Ledesma was a former Bellator, probably one of the best guys in Bellator for a while, and eventually fell down the hill, but pretty solid. Nate Williams, good grappler, and like a 40-fight veteran. And Joe Panafel, Joe the Party. Those are decent wins, man. Those are decent wins. This is not just an 11-fight winning streak over nobody. He's beaten pretty much all the best South Florida prospects that weren't in the UFC or Bellator already. He's picked up the Titan FC title, to my knowledge. He's the champion there. It's like, this guy's pretty solid, and then he picks up a decent win over Lloyd McKinney his last time out, first round rear naked choke. You'll notice to his game, I think he has 9 wins by submission, is that he's striking is decent, but he doesn't move well off his back foot. He needs to move forward. He'll strike a little bit, and then he tries to clinch you up against the cage. Once he clinches you up against the cage, because he's got this tall 5'8" frame, it's all about the outside trip. You try to go double underhook, disrupt your base, outside trip, peel you to the canvas. Once the fight is on the canvas, that's when he has his best success. I mean, his grappling is pretty legit. He trains at American Top Team in Atlanta, but I know he does spend some time over at Coconut Creek as well. So he's well trained and 33 years old. This is his last chance. He's on an 11-fight winning streak. He should just be in the UFC already. However, they're going to make him fight for his contract, and no doubt about it, he'll be ready to fight for said contract. But Zifa Shang, he's 35, so he's not one of these, because so far we've talked about a 24-year-old Chinese prospect and a 21-year-old Chinese prospect. They ain't got shit on him. This is a 35-year-old who's got over 40 professional fights, has fought some decent enough guys, and looks like he could actually be a problem. That's why I'm giving him live underdog status. Again, when you look at his record as a whole, notable names, I guess Pingyu Liu's currently in the UFC, but he beat Zalga Zumagulov on a split decision. Totally earned that split decision. I thought he won. Backed him up. Striking looked good. He's very hittable. He doesn't move his head, and a lot of his footwork is just linear. He's coming in on straight lines. He's not moving side to side, at least not in that fight 6 years ago. But that's a solid win, man. And then follows up with that with a win in 2016 over Dennis Bondar. Dennis Bondar is making his UFC debut in like 2 weeks against Malcolm Gordon. So another actually decent level guy. His losses, Murad Magomedov is currently 11-0 and a stud. And this Hayato Ishii, mid-level guy, I think he exposed him a little bit on the ground. But again, it's 5 years ago. Now, similar to Puerta, he eventually hits his stride in 2017. It's led to a 20-fight win streak for him. So these guys are coming in on a combined 31-fight winning streak. Pretty crazy. His problem is that those wins, those notable wins we talked about, once he hits this win streak, he regresses in opposition. He was fighting good guys. Hell, he was beating some good guys. Then he goes to 2-2, 0-0, 0-0, 2-1, 1-0, 11-5, 0-3, 5-5, 1-2, 0-1, 11-6, 6-1, 5-3. He does have a couple wins over some decent Russians. This Gazmura Aliyev, 6-1, Elkan Abrikhamalov, who was 7-0, and I think the last one was... No, that was about it. Just those 2 Russian prospects. They were both from Dagestan. One guy just outside of Dagestan, the other one from Dagestan. And what you see is, like, for a Chinese fighter, his wrestling's pretty decent, but it's the ground game. He's got an excellent way of taking the back. Once he takes the back, he searches for the rear naked choke. As far as his striking goes, a little bit robotic, a little bit herky-jerky, but he too likes to move forward. And I think that's going to be the key here against Juan Puerta. Puerta's no good going off his back foot. It's when he leads the dance, he has a lot more success. And I just got a feeling that Zifa Shang's going to be coming in hot. He's going to be strong. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to move him back, and he's going to slightly edge out the striking exchanges. As far as the clinch goes, he's stronger than Puerta. So why not be able to keep this fight standing, or if not, press him into the cage? If the fight does hit the ground, well, Puerta's a good grappler, but this 35-year-old man, this is Zifa's best spot as well, is that he likes being on the ground. And when interviewed about it, he was like, I think I can win the striking exchanges, and that'll be the key. And I'd be like, well, why is that the key? And he's like, well, because if it hits the ground, I'm definitely going to win. But if it just stays standing, I think I'm going to be able to outstrike him. So it's like, he's super confident that his ground game is going to be elite. He's been fighting some weaker level opposition, but he's beating some tough Dagestani wrestlers as well. That ain't no easy task. I just think at 35, he's more refined. He's a better version of what we're going to see. And we do see time and time again, the Chinese prospects in the UFC that are decent are kind of the older ones. None of them really jump out the hop. Sumadirji, I guess he's young. He's coming along. But you need experience. You need gut check performances. You need decent level of competition. And to be honest with you, Zifa Shang has done all that. So as far as 125-pounders goes, I think he's UFC ready already. Is he a top 10 guy in the UFC? Well, it's a thin division, but no, he's not a top 10 guy in the UFC. But he should already be in the UFC. He's in a 20-fight winning streak, and it's a thin division. He looks okay. Juan Puerta, meanwhile, should probably also be in the UFC. And so this is a good fight, but I got a feeling that this could be closer to a 50-50. Last week, what ended up happening was we talked about it, and it was like, what was the exact fight? Yeah, last week we talked about the first fight on the card. I straight up said, I said, I don't like this Binzi, who's a Chinese fighter. Olivia Murad was like a 3-1 underdog, but I ended up going with the favorite. Why? Why did I go with the favorite? Right on the bottom of the PRP ticket. But I mentioned, I was like, if you just put the Chinese fighter, it pays at 5-1. If you put Olivia Murad, it pays 15-1. So if you end up playing both tickets, the one with Murad obviously way better. But we analyze this as a close fight. Could go either way. The dog take's going to pay more. I got the same feeling with here. I feel like I should put a ticket with Puerta at the bottom as the PRP, but I think I should also make one ticket with Shaif at the bottom, with Zifa Shang, sorry, at the bottom. And this is going to pay way better. So really quickly, and then I've got to upload this bitch to YouTube because we're already running out of time. But you're going to go with Achilles at the top, parlayed with Justin Burlinson. That only gives you minus 224. I'd love to put somebody else on the ticket, but honestly, 2 fighters is kind of enough. After that, I want to go Kanan. And that's going to give you plus 141. Then I would go Erison Ferreira because I just think he's a little bit untrustworthy, and that's still only giving you plus 192. And then your last ticket out there, if you go with Juan Puerta, plus 345, 5 fights in a row, hit that PRP. Definitely be happy with that. But again, I think this is a live underdog. And the narrative this week is like, oh, the Chinese fighters are shit because they lost those fights in the UFC and they went 0-3 at UFC 261, and then they just lost. They went 0-2 on the weekend, and then furthermore, last Contender Series 0-3. Like, it's a bad run. Don't let that change anything. It doesn't matter. Good fighter can come from anywhere. Canadians go on bad runs where they lose 8 fights in a row, and then all of a sudden they'll win a few. It just depends who's fighting, what the matchup is. There's no real set narrative of this person's from here and they're no good. That doesn't exist. And so, yeah, I don't think we can just downplay all the Chinese fighters. I am trying to straight up downplay. No, I think they all got a shot. I just think Zifa's got the best shot. And then after that, I think Lung Q's got a decent enough shot. And I am trying to straight up think that Maheshate does not have a shot. Hopefully he's not the one that shits in the pie because we're going to have Estremadura at the top. So is what it is. Good luck. I realize that the lines have been blown up pretty bad here. If you take Shang, go Shang by decision would improve it. If you go with Puerta, let me check that really quick. What was the Puerta by decision? What's even just the fight goes the distance? Nah, minus 175, and I do agree with that. I think the fight is going the decision. If you're going to take Puerta, though, and you think that Shang's able to hang on, yeah, he's plus 120, plus 130. I think you can improve that line either side. Not that you really need to improve the Shang side, but I think you could just get a better number by going whoever by decision. Kanan Kawaihae, I think he could finish Bilaharinho, although I'm not like super confident in it. I just think he does get the victory. Erison Ferreira versus Kwang Yu. Yeah, I mean, whoever wins is probably winning by TKO, certainly inside the distance. Justin Burlinson, again, you can definitely improve that line. And if you want to get greasy with it, depending on what your book is, I think that's what I would do. I think instead of getting a shitty 225 ticket at the top, I would parlay Estremadura. Sorry, let me just parlay this really quick. I would parlay Estremadura with the Burlinson inside the distance. Not necessarily the TKO, because this is a parlay still. You don't want to get too fancy on it. But the Burlinson inside the distance, which Burlinson inside the distance with Achilles at the top is going to give you plus 120. So that's, you know what, we need to attack it a little more aggressively because we've missed the lines. That's probably what I'm going to do. Achilles Estremadura with Burlinson inside the distance at the top, going to give you that plus 116. It's up to you. If you want to take the shot on Ferreira, you go ahead and take that shot on Ferreira. I'm going to have to eventually, but I think I'm going to take that greasy shot on Kanan first. And yeah, at that point, we're rolling some much better lines. Much better lines. Even if you put Puerta at the bottom, you're still looking at a 6-1. Anyways, I'll leave up the rest to you. Those are just my notes. That's kind of what's in my head and how I'm going to attack this. But you feel free to do whatever you want. If you want to go with the prop side of things, single bets, which is going to be tough on single bets. But again, you know what's best. You know your bankroll management. If you need anything from me, hit me up on Twitter. Until then, good luck, everyone. We'll see you guys tomorrow for the Dogger Pass preview show. So easy and best.